All right, everyone. It is 12:02 p.m. and we respect all of your time, so we're going to get started here. We expect additional folks will be rolling in. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. My name is David London. I am the Deputy Director at the Greater Baltimore Culture Alliance, and we are here today for the Funding for Individual Artists panel discussion. For those of you who don't know, the Greater Baltimore Culture Alliance creates equity and opportunity in, through, and for the arts in Greater Baltimore. We were created in 2001 when a group of individual artists and organizations came together and said, you know what, we can be stronger together than apart. And so that was 23 years ago. And during that time, GBCA has worked very hard to nurture and promote a vibrant, diverse, and sustainable arts and cultural community. If you're interested in learning more about us, you can visit us at baltimoreculture.org. We are a membership organization. We would love to have you as a member, and you can learn more about that at our website as well. Along with us, we are joined today by many incredible organizations here in the region, including the Maryland State Arts Council, the Baltimore Office of Promotion in the Arts, the Robert W. Deutsch Foundation, the Peale, Baltimore's Community Museum, and the Guitierrez Memorial Fund. The folks joining us here today are incredibly passionate and devoted to the work that they do to ensure that resources are able to be delivered to the sector here in Baltimore. And I want to thank all of our panelists for being here with us today. I know we are all very busy at this time of year, and everyone here so appreciates you joining us. I also want to mention that this program is sponsored in part by a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts. This is in a series of professional development offerings that GBCA has been presenting over the last year, including accessibility for artists, emergency preparedness, navigating art fairs, among others. This is our final session of 2024, and we are quite excited about that. Here's our agenda for the day. We're going to start off by hearing one at a time from each of our panelists as they introduce you to their organization as well as the programs that they run. We expect those will be between 5 and 8 minutes each. Approximately, we'll move down the list. Throughout all of this, we encourage you, if you have any questions or comments, to please use the chat. I will be watching the chat as the presentations continue. After we hear from each one of the panelists, I may hit them with a question or two before we move on to the next panelist. Again, keep feeding us your questions, because at the end of hearing from all of the panelists, we will have a moderated Q&A. I have some questions that people have submitted to me in advance. I will also compile your questions as they come in, and it's your opportunity to ask those who are responsible for delivering funding to individual artists all of the things that you have been all wondering. So keep your questions coming, and we look forward to that. I presume most of us are fairly familiar with Zoom at this time. However, if you are not, along the bottom bar of your Zoom window are some of the features we'll be using today. Again, we are asking that all participants here both mute yourself as well as turn your cameras off. This will help us ensure that our panelists remain at the forefront of all of our screens. About the fifth button over is the little chat button. That's where you can enter your own questions that you want us to explore, but also where you can follow along with other questions that people might be typing. And lastly, we have automatic closed captionings generously provided by Zoom. If you hit that CC button in your Zoom bar, we will allow you to see live transcripts. They're not always perfect, but they are much better than no captions if you prefer them that way. We've already talked about what we want to accomplish here today. Audio off if you're not a panelist, and panelists, your audio off if you are not presently presenting. A few last notes. This session is being recorded. We will upload the recording of this session following the panel today. We've also been compiling an info packet, which has 1 or 2 pagers from our presenters about their individual programs. So we'll send that along to you as well. We'll also post a link to that info packet with the recording of the video. So if you're not joining us live, but rather watching the recording, you'll still be able to access those. If for some reason you can't access those, or the link doesn't work, you can always email us at hello@baltimoreculture.org, and we'll be able to share those resources with you. So that is the end of my presentation. So I'm going to jump out of here, and we're going to pass it along to our first presenter. We actually have 2 representatives joining us today from the Maryland State Arts Council. We have Laura Weiss and Jess Porter, and they'll be talking about several programs at the Arts Council, as well as introducing you to the council itself. So thank you both for being here. Thank you all for being here, and I hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, David. And I'm just orienting my screen here. Let's see. Okay, is that all good? It's been a while since I've been on Zoom. We are a Google Meet group, so always takes a minute. But hello, thank you so much for being here today. My name is Laura Weiss. I am a program director with the Maryland State Arts Council, and I am joined by my colleague, Jess Porter, who is our senior program director. We're going to go through as quickly as possible some resources today that are especially relevant for independent artists. Let's see here. So we're just going to go very briefly about just an overview of what the Maryland State Arts Council is in case you're not familiar. And then we're going to talk specifically about 3 grant programs: the Creativity Grant, our Professional Development Opportunity Grant, and our Grants for Artists program, and then just share a couple of other resources that might be relevant today. So in case you're not familiar with the Maryland State Arts Council, we are a state agency. We are within the Department of Commerce. The actual council of the Maryland State Arts Council, which is kind of like our board of directors, if you will, that is made up of 17 individuals, most of whom are named by the governor for a 3-year term. And then there's also 2 private citizens and 2 legislators that are also a part of the council. So that makes up our entire, the body of the council. Our full staff includes 19 positions. We are almost entirely staffed at the moment. We have 17 people in place, and our work is really just making sure that there's equitable funding for and access to the arts for all of the residents of Maryland. So our vision of the Maryland State Arts Council is to play an essential role ensuring every person has access to the transformative power of the arts. And we do that through our mission, which is to advance the arts in our state by providing leadership that champions creative expression, diverse programming, equitable access, lifelong learning, and the arts as a celebrated contributor to the quality of life for all of the people of Maryland. So, like I said, we're just going to go through 3 of our grant programs today, but as you can see here, we have a long list of different programs. So we're certainly not going to get into all of them today. Some are relevant for organizations and some are relevant for independent artists. But just to kind of get just the full scale of what we offer, you can see everything listed here. There are definitely other opportunities that are available to independent artists. So the 3 that we are talking about today, they're not the only ones, but they're just the ones that we thought would be most relevant for this presentation. So the Creativity Grants, that's one of the programs that I oversee with my co-program director, Emily. This has been a very popular grant program that's been around for a little over 5 years now. So it's gained a lot of popularity over the years. For independent artists, this is a project-based grant. So one of the features of this grant, along with many of our other grant programs, is that you can apply at any time. So the applications for this program are accepted on a rolling basis with a monthly review process. So that means that we take everything that's received in 1 month and then that's reviewed in the next month. And that just kind of keeps rolling for the entire fiscal year. Organizations are also eligible to apply for this particular grant, but I'm just going to be talking right now about the track that would be eligible for independent artists. So that would be the project-specific support. There's actually 2 types of project support that we offer through the Creativity Grant. This is new this year. So one track would be what we call a planning grant, and that's available for up to $2,000. The planning grant is really looking at funding those very early phases of the creative process for a specific project. So that might be research and development, things like that, that would really be just those very first steps as you are working towards a larger project. The other type of project grant support that we offer is an implementation grant, which is available for up to $4,000. And that's really looking at the execution of a project. So really making that project come to life and really looking at that kind of end product, if you will. You're eligible to receive one of these per fiscal year. So that would be either a planning grant or an implementation grant. But one project can receive both of those over the course of multiple years. So you can get a planning grant and then later on an implementation grant. So totaling, that could be up to $6,000. The application, no matter which track you pick, it's very brief, just 3 narrative questions. And if you take a look at the application, you'll see that it's really focused on community impact and community relevance. So we tend to recommend that applicants really think about how the arts are intersecting with community engagement with their project, really thinking about why is your proposed project important for the identified community, and thinking about what needs does it fill. And you'll see once you look at the application, the more specific questions that it's looking at as well. The next kind of grant that we're going to talk about is the Professional Development Opportunity Grant. This is also available to organizations and independent artists, but again, we're going to focus on the independent artist version right now. So these, we call them PD grants for short. They are available to help support your continued learning as an independent artist. So this typically comes in the form of supporting expenses that are associated with things like attending a conference, a workshop, taking a class, residency fees, hiring somebody like a consultant to learn a specific skill, things like that. So it's really about learning and continuing your skill building as an artist. Just like the creativity grant, this is an application that you can apply at any time. So those applications, again, are accepted on a rolling basis with a monthly review process. Like I said, organizations are also eligible to apply for this. PD grants are very popular for independent artists. We do see organizations applying for them, but we do see a lot of artists apply for this one. Again, it's a very brief application. This one has 4 narrative questions. And these grants are available for up to $2,000. And again, you're eligible to receive 1 per fiscal year. I will say that both of these programs are extremely popular. So we do see large volumes of these applications every month. So we do recommend that if you are, not awarded a grant in a particular month, to try again. That's definitely something that we see happen a lot. We're able to offer feedback if you are declined an application, and we're happy to work with you to really strengthen your application and make sure that it's really clear when you go ahead and apply. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Jess to talk about our Grants for Artists program.
Thanks, Laura. Jess Porter here, Senior Program Director at the State Arts Council. Great to see everybody today. And David, thanks for the wonderful timing of this info session. I'm excited to be here to talk a little bit about our Grants for Artists program, which actually just conveniently opened yesterday. And unlike some of the programs that Laura shared about, this is one of our grant opportunities that's annual. So it is open now for about a month, and the applications are due on January 17th. This program launched about 2 years ago, and with a lot of insight and community feedback sessions, we designed this program to provide $2,500 grants of non-project based support to independent artists in Maryland. And the grant can cover living or working expenses. What's really great about this program is that it's an eligibility-based review process. And so the key factors of eligibility are really that you must be an independent artist with a sustained creative practice, living in Maryland, obviously, and over 18 years of age. One stipulation is that the work that or the funding that you're applying for can't be related to any work that you're doing that's part of an institution or other organization. So it has to be work that you're doing independently. We also are unable to fund artists that are currently in a degree-seeking program, currently students. And we do ask that if you received a grant in the most recent cycle, so in this case, it would be 2025, you would be ineligible for support in this 2025 year. So that is the eligibility. As part of the application process, which we have worked to pare down pretty significantly, we do ask you to submit some work samples and some evidence of your practice as a artist. Those work samples really are just to confirm that you are a practicing artist. We are not looking at those critically. And so that's just like something to point out. This is really just based on eligibility. And once we review your application for eligibility, those that are eligible get entered into a randomized pool. And from that, we select our recipients. Similar to some of the other independent artist programs that Laura mentioned, this one also is extremely popular. And we're really happy that folks are applying, but of course it makes it fairly competitive. So each year we're only able to fund about 15 to 20% of grants or applications submitted. That being said, it really is not super time consuming. And again, every eligible applicant has equal chance of receiving funding. The reporting requirements are really minimal. We do not ask for receipts or detailed evidence of how you use the funds. We will ask you to report on how you use them in compliance with sort of like the eligible expenses. I also wanted to plug that we're having a full info session for this program this Thursday. That session will also walk you through the application process. It will be recorded and available online, and we'll also take questions during that session. Again, there's more information in the materials David will provide and on our website and the guidelines about the eligible expenses. But really, again, they can cover living and working expenses, creative needs, so materials, supplies, equipment rentals, costs to apply for exhibitions or performance-related expenses, professional development, many of the things that can be covered in some of the project-related grants that Laura covered, as well as health and well-being expenses. So a lot of our grant recipients use the funds to cover like deferred medical procedures, medical costs, food, travel. This program is really designed to support the creative sector in our state and make your lives more manageable and allow you more time to create. So please definitely take a look at it and reach out with questions. Really glad that we were able to get this in front of you right when it opened. So thank you again, David, for that really convenient timing.
Great. Thank you, Laura and Jess. Oh, did I cut you off?
We have a couple more
Go for it,
slides, but
please.
also like don't want to make sure we're not taking up too much time.
Be our guest.
Oh, okay. So just really a couple of quick pointers that we like to share with potential applicants. Many of you are familiar with applying for grants, but just some of our key tips. Really take a look at our guidelines for the programs that we covered and some of the other opportunities that Laura mentioned, and figure out what's right for you. Don't waste your time applying for something that seems like a stretch or something you're not eligible for. And you can always call the program director that's listed for that program to confirm like any kind of inclination you may have or concern you may have about eligibility. So please definitely reach out to us if you have questions or want to find out how you might be able to strengthen your application. Again, starting early is really helpful. That can make sure you have time to access some of the resources available. We do have most of our programs each cycle. We host a live information session, but we also have a pretty robust YouTube channel that has all of our prior recordings from webinars that are available, especially for programs that are open year long. Again, reach out to us if you want feedback on specific aspects or connections to rubric in your application. And always, we always encourage, have someone else take a look at it. You all are so involved in your artistic practice that sometimes it can be really helpful to have a second set of eyes, someone with a little bit more perspective. And again, take advantage of the opportunity to collect feedback from panelists. Like that can be really helpful in improving your application next time around. And then just covering a couple of other resources, in addition to, these webinars that we offer around our specific grant programs, we also develop professional development based on needs that folks come to us and request, or other topics. Some of our regular sessions include just general technical assistance. We do sort of topic specific sessions that are relevant for individual artists, including financial management, legal service that we partner with Maryland Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts on, marketing strategies, strategic planning, board engagement. We also have regional office hours, which happen in counties across our state. And the Maryland Arts Summit is something we regularly participate in too. That's offered by Maryland Citizens for the Arts every summer. So be sure to check out those offerings. We have an Eventbrite page that is linked on our website that really kind of lists all those upcoming opportunities. And then finally, other ways to get involved. You've heard us mention a couple of times panelists. Panelists and community members are really involved in evaluating our grant applications. Those are paid positions, and we do public calls every time that there's a grant program in need of panelists. So please check out the Ways to Get Involved tab on our website. You can see what programs are asking for panelists at that time. And you also apply in Smart Simple very similarly as you apply for a grant. We offer training for those programs, and it can be a great way to gain some insight about a grant program and how the back end of things work. And then we also on occasion request editors to help us review and improve programs. So be on the look for those calls. We send them out in our newsletter and our e-blast on social media, but you can always check on our website to see what might be available. And for editors too, those are compensated service positions. So those are just some other ways to get in touch with us. And our contact information is here as well as on the website. Look forward to answering any specific questions when we have time. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Jess, so much for sharing all that information. One question came in, which I will ask to you all, but also just for those who might be less familiar with Maryland State Arts Council, can you very briefly explain where the funding for Maryland State Arts Council comes from, just from if somebody has no clue?
Sure. You want me to take that, Jess? You want to take it? It comes primarily from the state. It is, allocated towards us through, we work with Maryland Citizens for the Arts, who is our advocacy organization, and they work with the folks in Annapolis to make sure that funds come towards us. We do receive some funding from the NEA, but primarily it's coming from the state of Maryland.
Great. Thank you so much. So one of the questions that came in the chat was sort of helping to define independent artists and whether there was a requirement that for somebody to identify as independent artist that they make their full-time living. And so if one of you could elaborate on how an independent artist is identified or qualified within your roles.
Sure. I can take that one, Laura. First off, certainly no requirement around this being your full source of income. We realize that that's a little bit of a unicorn, unfortunately, in the world of independent creative artists. It's also completely fine if you have an entrepreneurial approach to your practice and have a business or an LLC or something like that set up. Really for the grants for artists in particular, just as long as you are not just creating artwork within the context of like employment through one organization or an institution, that you have kind of a independent practice. It doesn't mean it can be not collaborative with other artists or anything like that, but just kind of outside of the structure of being paid and on payroll or contract with another institution or organization. And I think for grants for artists and for some of our other programs, we certainly want to see that, folks that are invested in like an ongoing sustained practice, an exploration of their creative work that is ongoing and, something certainly that folks are striving to bring in income around and sustain themselves around. But we realize that unfortunately in our state and across the country, that's not necessarily realistic for most folks.
Great. Thank you. I think we're going to move on, but if you have additional questions for Jess or Laura, please add them into the chat. We will have a Q&A once we get through all of the panelists, so please keep those questions coming in. I did want to also, and I'll put the link in the chat now, mention the resource bulletin that Maryland State Arts Council manages. I believe in partnership with Maryland Art Place, that collects a lot of additional opportunities from around Maryland. So I'm going to put the link to that in the chat as well. It is another place that is a great resource if you're looking for available funding. We are going to move along now to Lou Joseph, who was recently named the director of the Arts Council and based out of the Baltimore Office of Promotion and the Arts, which many of you know as BOPA. And Lou, congratulations. And I hand it
Thank
over
you.
to you.
All right. So I'm just going to share the timeline here. You guys can see that. Okay. Well, thank you, David, for inviting me to talk about Sondheim Prize. This is the 20th year for the Sondheim Award. And basically it is an award program for visual artists within basically the DC Maryland region. And it has very similar guidelines than what Jess and Laura had talked about. You have to be not in school, over 18, practicing artist. And essentially, it's a multi-tiered award program, and I'll just talk about each of those tiers and their jury and how the jury works. The jurors are selected. They're from outside the eligible region. This year, they're Mike Cloud is artist from Chicago, and Jenny Goldstein is a curator from the Whitney Museum, and Jacqueline Sater is a artist and curator from New York. And in the first round, and unfortunately, this year's cycle is closed. We are actually just about to announce the semifinals this year, but when you apply for the first round, all the artists can apply with up to 5 images or videos and some supplementary materials like artwork description, resume, and your contact information. Very simple application. And the jurors will score, excuse me, the jurors will score them online, and we'll take the top 20 to 25 scores, and those artists are moved to invited to submit further materials for the second round. So for that round, they can submit up to 30 images or videos, along with all the artist statement and resume and all of that. And then the jurors will also score that online, but then it's a little different for the second round. The jurors will use that scoring to aid in a discussion. Pre-pandemic, we used to meet in person and have a pretty robust discussion, and try to be thoughtful about selecting a group of artists for it to be the finalists. Now we do that via Zoom, but it is still really an important part of the jurying process that they discuss the artist work, and it's not just selecting who scores first. This year there'll be 5 finalists. In the previous few years, it's been 3. That's been determined by the exhibition space available at the Walters Art Museum, which I'm now mentioning that the selected finalists all have an exhibition at the Walters Art Museum and receive a $2,500 finalist award. And they work with the Walters staff to present their work, follow museum guidelines and all of those things. There's studio visits and all of that as part of the process. And then the final part is the jurors, our 3 jurors for the year, will travel to Baltimore and meet the artists in their exhibitions. And generally, what I like to say is that they're not. It's not quite like the county fair. They're not being picked just solely on their exhibitions out of context, but having the artists think about those exhibitions as a way to make a statement about where they've been going with their work, where they are, and where they see it going. And then ultimately that the jurors are selecting the Sondheim Prize winner obviously on the strength of their work, but also where they see their career going, and where the $30,000 Sondheim Prize funds they see like helping really launching an artist off into the next phase of their career. And then we have an award ceremony at the Walters Art Museum where we announce the prize recipient. And then it starts all over again. We select 3 new jurors and begin the process all over again. And then in the end, that $30,000 is unrestricted. It is not, other than a small final report, there is no rules about how it can be spent. And I think that's about it. It's relatively simple. It's a little bit of a process, but a relatively simple in the end. So I don't know if any questions popped up.
Thanks, Lowell. I have a question myself, and I will encourage
Mhm.
anyone else who has questions to put it in the chat. Is there specific criteria or rubric that the jurors are given that they perceive the artwork under? What sort of what are the criteria?
Actually, we purposely leave the rubric. There's not really like an intense rubric. It's really uh each year trying to find artists who are really involved in contemporary art in different ways, and trying to craft a group of artists and curators, and really trusting them to speak to. I mean, I always tell them to be greedy and like, what work do you want to see more of? What really excites you?
Yep.
And then, like I said, when you get to selecting the finalists, they are trying to think about it as a group. Like if they happen to score 5 photographers first, they're probably not going to want 5 photographers. It's, there's going to be, they want to have and have a discussion about what they're really excited about. Yeah, it's not uh broken down by like 8 or 9 different scoring rubrics.
Sure. Thanks. I don't think any other questions came up. Well, one thing when we get to the Q&A that I'd love to toss around is I'm just hearing you say, Lou, that you submit 30 images. Just hearing sort of and later we don't need to address it now, but when we come back, just hearing from the panelists' thought about documenting your work, how you any advice that you might give to artists to select the right images, things to consider when thinking about choosing your work samples. So we will come back to that. We did get one specific question, which I will pass along to Lou. Somebody asked, when will the semifinalists for Sondheim be notified?
This year, this afternoon. We actually got the votes all in yesterday, and moving ahead as we speak. So
Okay,
you'll
perfect.
hear from us very soon.
Thank you so much. Another reminder that all of this is unfolding in real time, and thank you again for our panelists for taking the time in your very busy period of the year. We are going to move on now to Alix Ebstein, who is joining us from the Robert W. Deutsch Foundation, and Alix oversees the Ruby's Artist Project grants. Alix, thank you for being here, and take it away.
My pleasure. Thank you for having us. My name is Alix Ebstein. I'm the Senior Program Manager of the Ruby's Artist Grant. It is the only individual artist grant program of the Robert W. Deutsch Foundation.
Yeah, I do like the radio.
All right. So our grant used to be an up to $10,000 award. It recently became $15,000. And a couple of new programs that we've implemented since my joining the foundation in 2022 are that now instead of up to $15,000, everyone who applies for the grant and receives it will get $15,000. It is standardized. So some people in the past used to apply to the Rubies with a $6,000 budget for their project, but this is an individual project grant. So it is looking for the production of new innovative work. It has to be used only for the production of your work. So curatorial projects are ineligible, and other I guess organizer projects. So if you're publishing a book of other people's work, that is an ineligible project. We award in 4 artistic categories, which we've defined here on our website. We have awards in literary arts, media arts, performing arts, and visual arts. And similar to the Sondheim Award, we also have panels of 3 jurors per category. So we are working with a jury panel of 12. All of them are selected also from outside the eligibility area, which is Baltimore City and Baltimore County. And they they all also are experts in their field. They typically have some connection to Baltimore. And, either they've curated here, they've exhibited here, they've, taught a class here, or they have some other interest in Baltimore as a city for creatives. So one of the programs I mentioned that we added is an alumni grant, which basically makes previous recipients of the Rubies ineligible to receive the Ruby Award in the main grantee pool. We're seeing something I noticed when I came on board was that we were seeing a lot of repeat grantees. And so now alumni, we still support them. We like to encourage awardees to be part of our expanded network of the creative community and continue to consider us a resource. And so yeah, we now have one alumni grant program where a previous recipient will receive $25,000. And it's also juried by the same panel. Actually, that one's harder. We haven't perfected it. It was juried by one person from each panel last time, and that is a panel of 4, which results in some ties. So 3 people is the way to go. This is our eligibility, similar to other people. You can't be a student. You have to be 21 years or older. You have to have a CV proving that you've been a working artist for at least 3 years. You can always contact us via our email right here, rubies@rwdfoundation.org. But something else that we've added in the past year, I can go back up to the current grantees and show this off, is pretty cool. In addition to our regular grantee program and our alumni one, which I mentioned, we've also added micro grants where the jury panels also just pick 2 projects, up to 2 projects that they think could benefit from the additional artist services that we offer as a grant program. So that is working with the jurors who agree to serve as mentors. So out of those 12 jurors, they're all invited to be mentors, but about 8 usually are able to do that. So they work with the grantees throughout the grant cycle. Our grant runs from, our grant opens the end of February, and we do a 2-round grant similar to the Sondheim, but we're based on Creative Capital. So if anyone has previously applied for the national grant, the Creative Capital Awards, our application looks very similar to theirs with good reason. And so that round 1 closes at the end of March, and then the top about 20% of scores in each category are then invited to submit a longer full application with a project budget and full narrative and images of past work. And so the Rubies is really interested in innovative projects, creative pivots, things that artists might not otherwise get funding for. And that's really what we tell the jury when we are evaluating our applications. So yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate that. A couple questions came in, and then I got a couple questions myself. It's a very
Sure.
simple upfront question, which is, when is the deadline or when is your next deadline?
Yeah, it'll be at the end of March 2025.
Thank you. And
And
another
we'll
direct.
we'll do 3 info sessions before that and lots of mailings, so don't worry.
Thanks. And the other question that came in was a very direct question also. If you apply to the mini grant and succeed, are you able to apply to the main, or would you have to do the alumni?
Oh, that is a great question. So actually, no one applies to the mini grant. The mini grant is selected from the finalists for the main application. And actually, the first time we offered it, one of the micro grantees did in fact receive a full grant next year. So what they really needed was like a little bit of support to get a very new idea for their practice off the ground. And yeah, they came back stronger with a stronger portfolio next time, and they received the full grant.
Great. Thank
Yeah.
you. Another question came in and said, are the review panelists for the Rubies local artists or creatives?
No, they are all from all over the country. Last year we had jury members from California, Texas, New York, Chicago, but typically they have all intersected with Baltimore in some way. So one was a writer who'd written about the music scene in Baltimore for a national publication. Yeah, one or two were curators who've been guest speakers or critics at area institutions. So that kind of thing.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks. One of the questions I hope to get to in the Q&A when we get there is thinking about things beyond the grant and support that funders are offering beyond just the financial support, of which you have done an incredible job expanding those offerings to Sondheim already. So I hope we can come back to you on that. I did have one question. You did say that there was a requirement to prove yourself as a working artist for 3 years. Since that question did come up earlier, I was just wondering what your qualifications were for somebody to identify as a working artist.
Sure. Yeah, we use the artist's CV or resume to evaluate that. Have you been showing, working, making work that you've exhibited locally or applied for other grants? And then also, if that isn't as clear on your CV, then we go back and look at the portfolio and the dates of the works that they're made. And everyone is also allowed to submit their website as a additional way to timestamp and date their work in their portfolio.
Great. Thanks. All right, I think we're going to move on so that we can get through the second half of our presentations and still have time for our Q&A. I know people have still been popping in. If you were just joining us, we're asking everyone to keep their microphone and video off, except for our panelists. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat. We will ask them directly after the presentations and also have a Q&A at the end. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague at GBCA, Alix Fenhagen, who is the program manager for the Baker Artist Portfolios and Awards.
Hello. So I just put a couple of things in the chat. The first is the website for the Baker Artist Portfolios. I'm not going to share any visuals right now, so if you want to click over and browse as I speak, you're welcome to, or otherwise, please go there and check it out afterwards. There's the email to reach us at if you have any questions, and then a link to sign up for an info session. We have a virtual info session tomorrow evening, and there's plenty of room. So if you want a fuller presentation with how-tos and a lot of visuals, please sign up for that. So the Baker Artist Portfolios were created in 2008 as a partnership between the William G. Baker Jr. Memorial Fund and the Greater Baltimore Cultural Alliance. And they were established to support artists and promote Greater Baltimore as a strong creative community and give more visibility to the artists and incredible work that happens here. The portfolios, the Baker Artist Portfolios is sort of a 2-in-1 program. We provide free online portfolios for artists in Baltimore across disciplines. And these portfolios expose area artists' work to national, regional, and local and international audiences. We're visited by around 100,000 visitors each year from countries all over the world. And these include curators, gallery owners, art lovers, artists. They run the gamut. We've had artists who have been included in exhibitions because of their portfolios, artists who have sold work because people have found them through the portfolios, and artists who have connected with other artists. So there's lots of opportunities just by having your portfolio. The portfolios are free, and many artists can use them and do use them as their main website. But the other aspect of the portfolio is that it serves as an artist's submission for the other part of the program, which is the Baker Artist Awards. So an artist doesn't need to do any sort of other separate submission, just have a portfolio. In order to be eligible to have a portfolio and in having one, to be eligible for one of the awards, you have to live in Baltimore or the 5 surrounding counties and be over 21 years of age. You can work in any discipline. So we have 6 disciplines on the site. We have visual arts, performing arts, music, film video, literary arts, and multi or interdisciplinary arts. Artists can include work in any of those categories on their portfolio, but they are requested to select one main discipline under which their portfolio will be adjudicated. And then each year, we have an adjudication process, and we award $90,000 to 6 artists across disciplines. We award a Mary Sawyer's Baker Prize to 1 artist in each discipline. That's a $10,000 prize. And then one of those artists will win an additional Mary Sawyer's and Bowden Prize, which is a $30,000 award. So they will end up with $40,000 in prize money, which is the largest independent artist award in the area. These are awards of excellence. They're not grants. So artists don't have to do anything with this money. It is awarded based on the portfolio, and they can do whatever they want with it. Within that, the adjudication process, which will take place starting on January 17th. That's the deadline for this year. So January 17th. At that point, the adjudication process will begin. We have a 2-tiered adjudication process. In the first tier, we do have local experts in 2 to 3 local experts in each discipline review all the portfolios or the first work samples in that discipline. So that's why we ask artists to choose a discipline, partially because an expert in that discipline will be reviewing the portfolios. And then they submit their scorings and rankings, and we combine those, and that's how we determine our 36 finalists, 6 per discipline. And then in tier 2, we have national experts review all the 36 finalists. They give us their rankings and their scores, and we compile those, and we arrive at our 6 awardees. This year, we will be announcing the names of our national jurors. We haven't done that in the past, but we're really excited to be able to do that. In addition to the award money, awardees also get opportunities like a biennial exhibition at the BMA, and special on Maryland Public Television. Then additionally, just by virtue of being on the portfolios, we have exhibition opportunities, things like we have a biennial exhibition now called Off the Web, which is currently on at the Peale, and any artist participating in the portfolios was invited to participate in that exhibition. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very quick summary, but I'm open for any questions that have popped up.
Thanks, Alix. You touched upon it, but I was wondering if you could just expand for everyone the difference between a grant and an award, just to provide a little bit more clarity on how you're separating those two.
Sure. Grants tend to be project-based. So you apply with a project that you're working on or a program that you're working on or something that you want to do. And then you're awarded some financing or money to do that. And then you do that and you report back or have something that you have to show for that. An award is based on the work that you have shown us. We are giving you an award for that work and your work as an artist. So you don't have to make anything with it or do anything with it or report back to us about how you spend that money. It is for work already created and the work you've already made.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I think we're going to move on. Again, keep your questions popping in. I'm compiling them and getting them ready for the Q&A. We're going to move on to now Krista Green. Krista, thank you for joining us. Krista is joining us from the Peale and oversees the Grit Fund there.
Unmute. I still have to learn to do that. And let me share my screen. Yes. Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here this afternoon. As David said, I am Krista Green, and I'm going to be presenting about the Grit Fund. And the Grit Fund is at home, or is a project of the Peale Museum, Baltimore's Community Museum, and also it's part of the re-granting program for the Andy Warhol Foundation. So we receive funding from Warhol, and it is passed through via the Peale's administration for the Grit Fund. I have this presentation up, but it's much longer than 5 minutes. So I'm gonna probably move through the slides really quickly. Like many of my co-program officers, I will also be opening the grant in the beginning of the year, and there will be info sessions for more in depth. So if you still have questions after the presentation today, you can definitely check one of those out, and I'll have a list of dates in one of the slides that will show you or tell you when those info sessions will happen. So Grit Fund gives up to $10,000 for collaborative projects that have a visual arts focus. So it's the Andy Warhol Foundation, and they are very focused on visual arts. So there needs to be a very front-facing visual arts project that happens in collaboration between an artist or artist collaboration, or an artist and community, and that could be a community group, a defined community group, or it could just be a community that the artist is choosing to work with. In general, Grit Fund grants about 10 awards a year, though last year, or I should say this current year, 2024, the jury did choose to award 6 awards of 10,000 each. So at the moment, there isn't a defined amount. It is really the jurors' discretion how they want to award. We've been talking a little bit about, you know, who are the jury and where they come from. This grant award is for Baltimore County artists. Artists should be, the lead artist in the project should be 21 and older. The jury is coming from not only Baltimore City or Baltimore County, this region. We actually also had a DC representative on our panel this last time. But Warhol also likes to have someone from another fund in another state. So the re-granting fund that Warhol funds through us has different funds all over the country. And typically someone from that fund, from another fund, is coming to not only see our process and maybe get their own ideas from it, but also this is letting them see what's happening in Baltimore, and definitely bringing in, I think, a fresh perspective to the jury panel. So we've had some really great cross-pollination working with other funds around the country. Let me get to, so I was saying visual arts focused. That doesn't mean an exhibition, but it could be an exhibition. You see here, there's publications, there's public events, and those public events can be public art installations, film screenings, festivals. We have funded, and it's coming up, some of the things that we fund, so maybe I'll just move over to those screens. So this past year, we have a very interdisciplinary group that's going to be producing something very performative. We have a focus on Puerto Rican heritage in Baltimore City, working with a Puerto Rican home museum that's located in Northeast Baltimore and doing oral histories. There will be community-focused events that are coming out of this. So that kind of thing. Working with Afro House and this again is something that's very performative, looking at Afrofuturism and doing a performative I just lost my train of thought there. I'm sorry. But so you get the, but I hope you get the gist. I mean, so it's not it is both an exhibition and a place kind of manifestation that's coming out of the artist collaborations, or it could be performative, or it could be a festival. Brush Mural Festival was funded last cycle in 2023, and they've since gone on to do another year of it. This is more of a spoken word shortcuts. They have been producing events out of the Reginald F. Lewis Museum, but they very much are looking at oral history, storytelling, and how that is very representative of the Black experience. Let me scroll down just to get to the dates. Oh, before I do that, the project review. So we have some core values that are reflected or need to be reflected in the application, but are directly reviewed by the jury. So we were talking earlier about rubrics. Pretty much what you see as an applicant, the kinds of questions that are being asked in the application, and I try to keep that application very short. Those are the exact kind of questions that the jury is looking at to evaluate your application. So, and then at the end, if you are granted and you're filling out your final report, you're basically restating or telling me how it went. This is how your project said it was going to look at collaboration. How did that collaboration go? So there's no trick question. Everything is, these are the questions. These are the questions that you're being evaluated by. These are the questions that I'm going to ask you again when it's time for you to report back about how your project program went. I'm a horrible driver and speaker at the same time. I'm sorry. So collaboration, accessibility, resonance and risk-taking, and then finally cultural integrity. When you are working in collaboration with a group, is it just out of expediency because they're able to bring something to your project, or are you trying to deeply engage with that collaborator? So here are the dates. I'm going to have the application open on the 6th, and it's going to go to April, and I can't see the other date, but it's like the 6th or the 7th. It's hidden behind the scroll of people. The review process will happen in May. I know in the past that date has moved, and that's because I am a softie. And if somebody needs some extra something, I give it to them. But I'm here to say right now, I am not doing that this year. So when you guys see that application is closing, it is closing. No wiggling around. Because I want to get people awarded, and we want to do the announcement in June, and we want their cycle to be July to June. So July 1st of 2025 through June 30th of 2026 is will be the grant cycle for this year's grants, for 2025 grants. How are we doing for time, David? I could keep talking.
Yeah, I think we're good. I think we should move on. So we got some time for questions. You have one more slide you want to bring us home with?
I'll just put up the let's see, info sign. So again, applications available January 6th to April 7th. And then we have info sessions, 2 virtual in January and February, and then in person at the Peale on March 13th.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I just have one clarifying question, and then we're going to move on to Bob, and then toss it back to our whole panel. Just you were talking about the award totals and the number of grants. So if I was doing my math right, that means you have $60,000 a year to give away, but how that's broken up is flexible. Is that a correct understanding?
That's correct. That is correct.
Great.
And like I said, last time the jury really felt strongly about giving the maximum to a smaller group rather than breaking that up. So
great. And you also mentioned, Krista, a bunch of other funds across the country that were re-granting from the Warhol Foundation. Are those also called the Grit Fund, or is the Grit Fund just the name for the Baltimore edition of that re-granting?
Grit Fund is just the name for Baltimore.
Got it.
It's just ours.
Great. Thank you. All right, Krista, thank you so much. We are going to move on now to our final presentation before we open it back up for Q&As. Again, if you have questions, I'm making notes, so keep them coming. If we haven't answered them yet, we will get to them. Bob Gehrman is one of the members of the board at the Guitierrez Memorial Fund and is here today to talk about that entity and that funding program. So, Bob, thank you so much for being here, and I pass it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. Thanks for having me today. Again, as you said, my name is Bob Gehrman. I've been on the board of the Guitierrez Memorial Fund since its inception in 2011. I'm just going to share our website with everybody because it's got a lot more information about what we do. And I'm going to start actually by backing up a little bit to tell you a little bit more about why we were founded and to give you a little bit better sense of what we like to fund. So let's switch it here. So the Guitierrez Memorial Fund was started after the passing of a good friend of mine, an artist, a community member of the Woodbury community, John Guitierrez. John owned a metal and woodworking studio called Guitierrez Studios that's located in Clipper Mill. In my profession, I'm an architect, and John and I would often collaborate on projects where I need a real signature element like a stairway or a handrail, something that John could make especially well. You can see his influence all throughout Clipper Mill and the architectural details that help kind of reinforce the placemaking aesthetic of the mill. And you can also see his work throughout homes and restaurants around Baltimore. Guitierrez Studios survived John's passing and is still doing great work around Maryland and beyond under the leadership of John's life partner, Roya Galpira. She's our board chair. One of the lasting memories of John's presence was a fire pit outside of the studio at Clipper Mill. If you've been to Clipper Mill, you'll notice that there's a very large fire pit that's a fireplace there. John was a big gregarious type person who brought together all kinds of artists and artisans and other creative types at parties and get-togethers out in front of the studio. And before he passed, there was a design to make this open fire pit more in line with building codes to make it more legit. So he passed before it got built, and a bunch of folks got together right after he passed to raise money to finish the design and to build it. And that was our first memorial walk. After that, people started asking us about when the next walk would be, and that really sparked the flame to ignite the birth of the Guitierrez Memorial Fund. We are fully funded by the community and our sponsors of our annual fundraiser walk. So after that first walk fundraiser, we developed an annual grant called the Legacy Grant that provides what we call Kickstarter funding for arts projects that otherwise might not get funded by larger organizations. We don't require any kind of nonprofit status. All we ask for is a great idea. We started as just an organization in collaboration with Fusion Partnerships, and in 2013, we received our 501c3 status and operate under that covenant. So a little bit more about our Legacy Grant. It's important to us that the project have some tangible and long-lasting impact on a community, and it should be able to be completed in about 1 year. We generally don't fund ongoing programming or operating expenses. The project must be in Maryland. It must have some element of permanence to it. We like it if it has an educational aspect to the project through training or skills learning, et cetera, other community building types of processes in order for the artwork to be completed. One of our other things that we look or tests that we look for is whether the project can be fully funded by other corporate or other organizations. We're really looking for projects that need our particular fundraising aspect and not necessarily something that's just funded by some of the larger arts organizations. We want our projects to have a positive impact on all people, regardless of race, ethnicity, political or religious affiliation, and it should be accessible to the public. So over the past 15 years, we've funded over 20 different projects. Let me flip over here. Ranging from community sculptures to gardens to murals to mosaic street signs to Baltimore podcast. Our grant application is available in mid-August and is due on October 30th, and we usually award them in early January. We may award one or more project, and we may not award any. It's really just based on the quality of the applications and our available funding. Our grant range is anywhere from $1 to $30,000, again, just depending on whether funds are available. Our board consists of 5 people. We are 100% volunteer. We have no staff, and we have really minimal expenses. So all the money that we raise really goes towards these incredible projects. Subsequent to having awarded several legacy grants, we decided to create a second grant called the Sustainers Grant, and that helps to keep helps with the upkeep of projects that have been completed in the past. So these provide up to $2,500 for ongoing maintenance, repairs, or just sprucing up projects. Again, our annual walk is in the 3rd week of or so of October, held up at Clipper Mill, with a walk around Druid Hill Park. The only requirement is that you make at least one trip around the fireplace at Clipper Mill. So thanks for having me again, and I'm open to any questions you may have about us.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that, Bob. I will pose to you this question that came in that I think was directed towards you, but once we get into the questions, I would like to also pose this question to any of our other panelists who want to offer it, and that was about compensation for artists' time and whether artists' time and an honorarium for that time or direct compensation for that time could be included as a valid use of funds received. So, Bob, I'll toss that to you. Then I'll make a couple other comments. I'll bring all of our panelists back, and I can start with that question. So other panelists, you got a few seconds to think about how you will answer that. So Bob, I'll start with you there. Oops, you're muted, Bob.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. We expect artists to get paid for their work, and we have a very complete, I think, set of requirements and eligibility and information about how the funds are used. We even like to host, an opening party at the end of, the completion of a project. So we really want the funds to be used creatively, but we certainly expect the artists to get paid as a stipend as part of the project.
Great. Thank you so much. Before we just move on to other questions, again, if you have questions, please type them into the chat. I've got a list of questions to ask. If our panelists are able to, if you could turn your camera back on, that would be great. Before we proceed any further, I did want to mention that we invited a representative from the Mid-Atlantic Arts Foundation to join us today. They intended to, but were unable to at the last moment. They do not presently have direct grants available to individual artists, and so we were going to embrace the opportunity to talk about fiscal sponsorship. And how individual artists can apply for funding through an organization. We're not going to have time to get into that today, unfortunately, so I will say keep your eyes peeled, and hopefully somebody here represented on this panel and the organization is able to present that to you all in the coming year. But I am going to put the link to Mid-Atlantic Arts Foundation into the chat. They are certainly worth checking out. They are based here in Baltimore, and they do have opportunities available for organizations looking for funding. funding. So as promised, I wanted to start for anybody who wants to answer the questions. Panelists, you can all unmute yourself. However you want to handle this is up to you, or unmute when you want to talk. But the question that I just posed to Bob about compensating for artists in their time with the funds that they receive from project-based funding.
Oh, yes. Yes, if you submit your budget to support your project for GRIP Fund, you should absolutely include yourself in there. You're not working for free, and the full budget, it's going to include your costs as well as any other program costs.
Krista, do you offer, or does anybody here offer a standard rate that they expect to see, a minimum, or what you consider to be too much? I mean, is there, just from your experience, something that jurors respond to positively or universally?
I think typically they're looking at 30–40% should be kind of admin and the stuff that you need to make your project go. You don't want to exceed 40% because then it's questionable, I think. So for grit, keeping it in that 30 to 40% range is good.
Great.
Yeah, with rubies, we say something similar, and then we also allow additional artist overhead to be included. So yeah, we're sort of somewhere around the 40–45% when you tally all those different categories.
Great.
And I'll just chime in for the creativity grants with MSAC. Absolutely include artist fees and stipends within your budget. The budget is the third question within that application, so absolutely include that. We don't have like a standard formula or percentage that we recommend or stipulate, but what we do recommend is really showing how you're getting to that rate. So if you are saying that $1,000 is going towards you, perhaps break that down by an hourly rate or something that is indicating how you got to that total. That's something that really helps panelists understand your time and how you're thinking about it.
Great. Thank you. A question did come in about residency and residency requirements to apply. So I was just wondering if I could just go back in the order that you presented, and just really quickly, you could just say what the residency requirements are for each program. So I'll just start at the top with either Laura or Jess. Although I think you probably have the easiest answer of everyone.
Yeah. I can take that one. For us, Maryland residency, like having an established address, like either renting or owning property here, is what we're looking for.
Great, thank you. And Lou?
State of Maryland, DC, I think Arlington and Alexandria.
Oop, yeah, you got a little fuzzy there, but I heard
Counties and
all right, I think Lou is fading out here, but I heard state of Maryland, DC, Arlington, and a few additional spots in Virginia, and you can get all those details on the BOPA website for the Sondheim Prize. And then Alix.
Yeah, the rubies right now are we're restricted to Baltimore City and Baltimore County residents, same residential standards of owning or renting property there where you live and is your mailing address.
Thank you. And Alix.
So you have to be a legal resident of Baltimore or the 5 surrounding counties. So Anne Arundel County, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Carroll County, Hartford County, and Howard County. And you have to have been a resident for the year prior to the season you're applying for. So for this season, you have to have been a resident starting September 1st, 2023.
Thanks. And Krista?
Grid Fund funds for Baltimore City and Baltimore County.
Great. And Bob?
We don't have any residency requirements for the artists. It's just that the project should be located in Maryland.
Great. So I know everyone here works with a limited supply of funding that they are able to offer through these and other programs, but a question came up from Jazz Ehrenberg, who many of you know as a incredible and well-known public artist in Baltimore. And so the question came up about what the possibility was for a specific grant program for public art. I'm not sure how we want to address that question. It may be in the abstract of how new grant programs come about and what that process might be, if that is relevant, or if you have any insight into any pending programs, or if public art is relevant for your own program, feel free to chime in. It sounded like, Bob, on yours that might be as
Can
well.
I just can I just jump in real quick?
Please.
I know that there are a lot of grants available for public art, but I'm talking about more of an award, just to clarify.
Got it. Thank you.
Just speaking from the Baker perspective, that like a public artist who created a portfolio containing their public art would be considered in the same way another artist would be, so that, you know, there's no reason that a public artist couldn't, but it's not specific to public art. It would probably fall under visual art in general.
Same for Sondheim.
And
Yeah, I would
that's
agree. With Goodyear Memorial Fund is also mostly looking for publicly accessible art. So things that are sort of behind doors or unable to be sort of viewed out from out in the public are generally not what we're looking for.
I funded Jess before, so my answer is yes.
Great. It does bring up an interesting point that particularly, Krista, when you were talking and you were saying that you fund visual arts projects, but then 4 of your examples would, I would say, push the boundaries of what are typically called visual arts. And I just made a note to myself that we are living in an era where many artists are becoming increasingly interdisciplinary in all of their practice, and the boundaries between specific disciplines are becoming blurred. So that's not a question, that's a statement, but I'd love for any of you to respond about specific discipline qualifications, how that's shifted over time, and maybe how those disciplines reflect the nature of art today.
I agree. It's very unusual to receive a proposal that is specific to one discipline, whether that's the artist's own practice or who that artist is collaborating with to do something. So yes, you're right. That visual art is very, very broad. And I haven't gotten any pushback from Warhol because of that.
Great.
For the Rubies, we sort of find ourselves in a similar position to Alix at the Baker, where, you know, we ask artists to sort of self-nominate into the category that they want their art evaluated in. So it may be interdisciplinary and, you know, span multiple categories, but when we ask you to pick one of our 4 main categories, we're asking you to consider the jury and who might be best at evaluating and assessing whether or not your work should be funded for a new project.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I would add for us with the Creativity Grant and other monthly programs that we offer with the State Arts Council, they're open to all disciplines. So there's not like 1 month is theater and 1 month is visual arts or something like that. They're open all the time for all of the different disciplines that we're able to support. I would say just anecdotally, yeah, we see a ton of crossover between, you know, interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary applications. We do ask that there is a question that asks, you know, what you identify the project as being primarily focused on, but it's just informational, just so that we have it. But we welcome all of them.
Thanks, Laura.
Yeah, same here. I think we kind of have no category definition within our grant application. It's really just about how the project engages the community, you know, through any options, really at the artist's discretion.
Great. Thank you. This came up for me when Laura and Jess were talking and mentioned that there's always the opportunity to be on a grant panel. One of the questions that I know we get asked a lot is, what tips do you have so that I can write better grants as an artist? And the one tip that I often give to people is sit on some grant panels, be on the other side of the process, get into the head of panelists who are scoring based on a rubric and understand how that works. So I share that tip for myself, but I also pose the question to the rest of the panel, which is there something that you recommend different from that for somebody who says, how would you suggest I get better at writing grants? And maybe we can move, we are at 1:20, so we're sort of moving along here, but maybe we can ask each of you if you want to share one tip that you would present to artists who are maybe just getting into grant writing or just starting to look for grant funding. And we can go in reverse order this time, Bob, if you want to start, and we can
Sure.
end up at MZAC.
Yeah, no problem. I think on our website, I think we tried to anticipate what questions people would have about those. And so we've got literally a checklist of things on our website. When you go to our grant application page, there's a sort of basically facts, if you will. And just as long as you can check box each of those answers yes, you're good to go.
Great. Thank you. And Krista.
I think what you just said about being on a panel is hugely helpful, I think, for anyone who doesn't understand the process. But the other thing I would say is your proposal that you present needs to be really clear. You know what your project is and what you want to see come out of it, but being able to really clearly state that so that a panel that doesn't know you, doesn't know what you're capable of, and who is looking at how you presented your project versus someone else, it's critically important that you tell them what you're going to do, and then tell them how you're going to do it, and then tell them again how it's going to happen. It's really just, you may think it's redundant, but be redundant. Be very, very specific and clear about what you want to do.
Great. Thanks. And Alix, I know that the Baker portfolios is slightly different than a grant application, but if you have recommendations as well, please share.
Yeah, it's a little different. I like to tell artists to think of it as a practice, and the creation of your portfolio as how do you tell the story of your art and you as an artist within the framework of this portfolio. I think it makes it an enjoyable practice and a really great challenge for artists. It's something that you'll have to do over and over again in your career. I think if you're comfortable, ask other artists who you respect to look it over and see if it tells how they see you as an artist. And lastly, I'd say look at other portfolios. Look at portfolios of artists whose work is in your same discipline or you see as somewhat similar to yours and see how they're doing it.
Great. Thanks. And Alix.
Yeah, I would say also if you don't receive a grant,
Yes.
take advantage of the feedback that we all offer. We kind of accumulate a panel's worth of information, and we can help give that to you at the end of each round. I know, yeah, MZAC says they offer. I get on the phone with anyone who wants to get on the phone or Zoom and go over last year's application. And between round 1 and round 2, we also offer feedback before people submit their second round. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you. And Lou.
Yeah, not quite a proposal-based program, but I mean, I feel like the thing I always end up saying is really look at your documentation, especially that first round. You have like kind of 5 images to really make an impression. So having the best documentation possible, even if that's for some folks, you can spend money and have a professional photographer document your work, but it's still possible to at least get a good try to think of a good representation. That might be reaching out to other artists who are familiar with your work, because I definitely have seen documentation that I'm disappointed to see because it doesn't quite show the work, and I can't imagine the jurors can see it. And then also, if you're submitting materials for like Sondheim, I generally advise like not filling a whole 1-page PDF with like 10-point font. It's too much. Some concision, considering that they're going through 300 applications, is a great idea.
Thank you. And then I'll do Jess and then Laura, and then we'll bring it home.
So my response is a little bit twofold for thinking about the Grants for Artists program. I think going back to the rubric criteria is always really important at the end. You may have laid out like a really beautiful like story arc of your work, but maybe once that's done, go back, look really specifically at the criteria, and see, how it's matching up, like once everything's together for Grants for Artists, since the criteria is eligibility based. I think like one of the important things you can focus on is like how you're representing the sustained nature of your artistic path, and that you have the option of uploading either work samples, of individual pieces, a resume, or sharing your links to your social media accounts that may capture your creative process or practice, and just choosing something or multiple things that really kind of can demonstrate a sustained practice, I think is a good tip for that program specifically. But then for other programs that have additional criteria, again, just kind of going back and double checking and seeing how things are matching up, and that you've really addressed those specific points that the panelists will be scoring.
Great. Thank you. And Laura.
Yeah, I think everybody really covered all of the ways that I would go about it. But I think just a strategy that I often recommend is just giving a draft application to somebody who's not in your field, who's maybe not, not an artist, maybe your uncle or your neighbor or something like that, that can take a look at it and really poke holes in it. To Krista's point, really making sure you have that who, what, when, where, why. You might just entirely miss the date. You never said when the thing is happening, but somebody could really point that out, if they take a look at it. So that's something I always recommend.
Great. Thank you. And I'll just chime in with my own advice, which is don't be discouraged and keep trying. I think if you've heard something from everyone here today, it's that the panels are always changing. And just because your application wasn't accepted one time doesn't mean it won't captivate the next juror. So keep trying. You can resubmit. You can hone your vision over time. You can keep working on your applications, adjust them for other opportunities, and just keep going. That's my advice. I do want to wrap up here. I know that there are still some questions coming in. When we send around the follow-up with the resource packet after, I will make sure that you know how to get in touch with the people who were here today, should you have additional questions that we were unable to answer. Before we go today, I just wanted to let everyone know of a few other upcoming GBCA events in the coming days. Tomorrow, as Alix mentioned, from 6 to 7:30, we have a full Baker info session. You can register at bakerartist.org/sessions. On Thursday afternoon, we are hosting a panel on what makes a successful arts council with representatives from across the country. This Saturday at the Peale, December 14th from 12 to 4, we're hosting a literary fair with nearly 20 literary artists, and we hope you're able to make it to the Peale before January 19th of next year for our Off the Web exhibition showcasing nearly 200 Baltimore area artists. Once again, I want to thank all of you for joining us here today, and especially thank you for our panelists for not only taking the time today, but for all of your passion and hard work to making sure that artists here in our region are able to get the funding and the support to push their creativity and the creativity of our region forward. Once again, we are here from the Greater Baltimore Culture Alliance. Thank you all. Happy holidays if we do not see you again. And we look forward to seeing you all next time. Panelists, if you can stay on for a second, we can say goodbye. Thank you to the rest of you for being here, and we'll see you soon. Take care.